Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks. This week, I had to miss the taping, and so you'll hear an intimate conversation between Robin and her longtime friend, Kim Kaplan. Kim was diagnosed with Crohn's disease very, very young, and before there was really any treatment. You'll hear them talk about raising kids as a single parent with inflammatory bowel disease, navigating romantic relationships, symptoms like brain fog and fatigue, and realizing that while you have this disease, it doesn't have you, and you need to live life to the fullest. Cheers!
Hello, everybody. It is your host, Robin, and I'm flying solo tonight. It's just me. Alicia can't make it, and so I'm about to have a great conversation with my friend, Kim Kaplan, who I've known for 8 or 9 years, which we both can't believe it's been that long. Kim, I'm so excited that you agreed to be on the show. So start off the way we always do. What are you drinking?
I've got a Mike's Hard Lemonade over here because, it was easy to pull out of the fridge.
I am not hating on a Mike's Hard Lemonade. I think you said you have black cherry. It's the black cherry flavor. That's my favorite flavor.
My favorite flavor.
I am enjoying some Prosecco tonight, this evening. I'm channeling Alicia because she always has some kind of champagne or Prosecco. So this is for her. Now that we've established our beverages, shout out to Mike's Hard Lemonade, will you please share with us your IBD journey?
Oh my goodness. I don't even know where to begin with my IBD journey. My IBD journey began when I was 3 years old, actually. So it's so much of like, so I'm told, because, who remembers when they're 3? But apparently when I was 3, my siblings and I all got the chicken pox. And according to my mother, I got the chicken pox and then it was just one illness after another. Like I got the chicken pox and then I would get fevers all the time and I would get strep throat all the time. And it was just a spiral. And it took about 2 years until I was 5 to actually be formally diagnosed with IBD. Over, those 2 years, I stopped growing, I lost weight, and it was just in and out of the doctor's office constantly trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And then at 5, I was actually diagnosed with IBD through exploratory surgery because they had no idea what was going on. And at that point, we're talking 37 years ago, they didn't really see IBD in kids, especially kids as young as I was at the time. And so they actually had to do exploratory surgery. And that's how I was formally diagnosed with IBD. And then my journey was just a series of steroids, being put on steroids and not coming off steroids until I was in my 30s. So a series of trying every medication under the sun, missing a lot of school, trying to ignore the disease that I couldn't really ignore because it took over my life. But I didn't, I was so young, I didn't really understand what was going on. And through childhood, through adolescence, college, young adulthood, I honestly never entered a remission. If I did, it was a very short remission that lasted about 6 months. After I had a couple surgeries, I had another resection when I was in elementary school, another resection when I was in middle school. I had central line placements. And all those resulted in like a remission of maybe 6 months until I fell out of remission. And so my IBD story is really just dealing with it every day while trying to ignore it at the same time, if that makes any sense at all.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. So I'm going to ask you a question. I know you're like still in it, but you said you had multiple resections. So did they resect your large intestine? Did they resect your small intestine? What was involved in your resections?
So my disease primarily when I was younger was in my small bowel. So I've had a jejunal resection, a small bowel resection. The part of my small bowel that absorbs B12 was resected. I'm honestly actually surprised that I don't have short gut syndrome because so much of my small bowel was taken out. Mm-hmm. And it sounds weird to say, but I feel like my entire life is this blur. Like it's almost like a brain fog of my whole life because I was so sick that all I remember is snippets of my childhood, snippets of, coming home from school sick or, my mom used to always, her big thing was like, I had to try. Right. So she used to love to tell the story about how she would take me to school. She knew I didn't feel good, but I always had to try to go to school. So she would take me to school and she would sit in the school parking lot, literally like waiting for the phone call because she knew that the phone call would come and I would end up having to go home.
But at least you tried.
But at least I tried. So, but yeah, for the most part, I just feel like everything's just this blurry brain fog, of just dealing with IBD every day, medications and stomach aches and pains and arthritis and, all of the things that come along with this disease.
Don't worry about your puppy. As soon as I say that, he or she barks more.
Oh, two. And I can't believe I got a puppy. Why was I crazy enough to get a puppy?
Okay. So you have you don't know life without IBD. You don't remember a life without IBD. So unlike somebody like me who was diagnosed in my mid 20s, like it is the life you know. And for me, it was like I had 2 small babies and, I had all these plans. And then all of a sudden received this diagnosis, and the life that I thought I would have is no longer the life that I'm going to have. Right. So, right.
Yeah. For me, it's all I know. And for me, it has been the thing. It's weird because I like to say that IBD has made me who I am, right? It's made me resilient. It's made me strong. Like I roll with the punches. Like what else? One more thing. Come on, let's do it. But by the same token, it's always been there almost as, and I think now that I'm older, I can see, I don't want to use the word excuse, but I feel like my fear of IBD, and I think there was so little education when I was younger. And my mom and dad did the best that they could, but the resources that are available now weren't. The camps and the support, there were support groups, but they weren't pediatric support groups, right? And so I think my fear of IBD also held me back in a lot of ways. So as an adult, I say IBD's made me who I am. But when I was younger, I think my fear of IBD got in the way of so much.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, even just 20 years ago, 22 years ago now, resources, information, medications, everything, even then wasn't what it is now. So, I mean, I completely understand that, especially for, we're both moms. And when our kids, if something's wrong with our kids, it's just devastating. So when I hear your story, I immediately think about your parents, right? And I immediately think about what your parents went through trying to help you when there was really no information available. I usually don't like to share too much of my kids' personal lives, but my younger daughter has psoriasis. And when she was little, I was crying in the doctor's office, right? Saying, you have to help me. There has to be something we can do. You have to send me to a specialist or something. So just thinking about what you as a child going through it and not understanding it. And then also your parents not understanding it and being the adults and not being able to fix it.
Well, and my dad's a doctor, Robin. So here's my father, who at the time was a neonatologist. Now he practices pediatrics, but at the time he took care of sick babies. Kids, and he couldn't help his own daughter. And so now, to your point, now that I'm a mom, I think about how hard and devastating that must have been to watch your child literally wake up in pain every day. And your career, your whole life is, my dad growing up he saved thousands and thousands of babies' lives. And he couldn't for his own daughter. And so I can't imagine now that I'm a parent, what that must have felt like for him to be able to heal kids for his job, right? Who he had no relation to, and then come home every day to a sick child and not be able to do a damn thing for her.
Yeah, it's rough.
So, but when we're younger and we're in it, we don't see that perspective. We just see the take it away. Why can't you take it away? Why can't you make it better for me? Your mom, your dad, you're supposed to make it better.
Yes. And even when it's not a devastating, and I say devastating diagnosis, especially back then, because the lack of resources, even when it's not that critical, your children still want you to take it away, right? No matter what it is, they still want you to take it away.
Like I remember snippets, like even as we're talking, and it's like I remember snippets. Like I remember my dad literally coming home from work at 11 o'clock and crawling into bed next to me and feeling that like I just want her to feel better. Like I could feel that exude from him. Or my mom coming in, things that I find myself doing as a mom, right? Like when my kids are sick, putting my hand on my kid's chest just to make sure he's still breathing. I remember my mom doing that to me when I was younger. And at the time, like, what the heck is going on? You know?
Right. And now you understand.
Yeah.
I am going to switch gears a little bit because I feel like we could go down a road that would make us both cry if we continue on that conversation route. I'm not ready to go there with the tears yet. So over the course of the 8 years that we've known each other, we found a couple of similarities, like in our disease journeys, and the similarities that ended up with completely different results because we have different doctors, right? So
Right.
I think that I was in your city when I decided to change doctors to go see an IBD specialist when I was in my flare in 2018. And like I left Tennessee on Friday and had a doctor's appointment with a specialist on Monday.
Oh, wow.
If I'm remembering this correctly. And I don't know if you remember that, how bad I was feeling when I was there with you guys. And I remember telling you that I think I have Crohn's and not ulcerative colitis. And then when I told you that they found dysplasia, you said
that they had found dysplasia in my colon, and I wound up with a permanent ostomy because of it.
Yes. So your doctor found dysplasia and you wound up with a permanent ostomy, and my doctor found dysplasia and decided to remove it during the scope and then just monitor. So what was that like for you to hear that you had dysplasia and then go right into you're going to have an ostomy? I mean, did she talk to you about options, or I say she, I'm just assuming she, did your doctor talk to you about options or?
So at that point, I had been really sick for a really long time. After I had my now 9-year-old, and at the time, my ostomy was in 2015. So he was not even 3 at the time when I found out about the dysplasia. I went into a really bad flare after he was born, like to the point that I feel like he spent the first couple years of his life, like literally in the bathroom because I couldn't get off the toilet. And so the doctors, before I saw my doctor at Vanderbilt, who I now see, who was the one who recommended the ostomy, I had been told by my other GI that I was seeing at the time that I really needed one. And he had wanted to do one temporarily, but for me, an ostomy equated to giving up, because back when I was first diagnosed, that was like the worst thing that could have happened to a patient. And then you have to think, like, this was like 30 years ago, right? Like the worst thing that could happen to a patient is ostomy. And I didn't have a lot of education about what an ostomy really was. All I knew was that had been my mom's biggest fear when I was diagnosed with IBD. And in my mind, an ostomy meant that the disease had won. And so I had avoided the idea of having an ostomy because I had seen, in those 2.5 years before I made the decision to do the surgery, I had seen other surgeons who had recommended temporary ostomies, and I wouldn't do it. I equate it to, I had to mourn the loss of my colon in a way. Like I had to be ready for that. And I wasn't ready. And I was convinced that if I kept trying medications, I would eventually find something. Or quite honestly, my whole life, I have been dealing with IBD and I had made it through. So why can't I just keep dealing with it? Like, why does it have to be this extreme thing of removing an organ, right? Why can't I just figure it out? And what eventually happened is the GI who I was seeing at the time said to me, I don't know what to do with you. You have exhausted all medications available. You've exhausted every medical option. And we can't remove your small bowel because you don't have any to remove. And I don't know what to do with you. And he had wanted to send me to one of the renowned IBD centers, like, right? Mayo or Cleveland. And I looked at him and I said, I have 2 young kids and we're in Nashville. I'm going to go to Vanderbilt. And so I went to Vanderbilt and they did scopes and my doctor did the scope. And I remember it was October 2nd that she called me because that's my dad's birthday. And I remember calling my dad after I got the results of my scope and saying they found dysplasia. And I will never forget what my doctor said to me. She said, you have a choice. She goes, you can either watch your kids grow up and be there when they get married, or you cannot live that long and be around because this will turn into colon cancer.
Wow. That's pretty dramatic.
Yes, but it's what I needed. And keep in mind, at this point, I had IBD for 30 years.
Yes.
And we all know statistics, right? We all know statistics of having IBD and having Crohn's for that long. But Robin, it was what I needed to hear. It put it in the perspective of I'm a mom. And this is not me that we're talking about. This is me watching my children grow up and being there for the next 50, 60 years to see my children live their lives. And I needed her to put it in that perspective for me, because that meant I couldn't ignore it anymore, right? That meant that I couldn't put it off. That meant that it was something real and that I had to make the only choice that I could make. And that was to be the mom for my kids. And if that meant removing my colon, and I joke with my kids, right? Like when they're really pains in the ass, I say, mommy removed her colon for you. So, because I'm open and honest with my kids, so why not?
Yes.
I gave up a limb for you. I gave up an organ for you.
I lost 6 feet of organ for you, kid. Yes, 100%. Yes.
So, but I needed that. I needed her to put it in that perspective for me to stop ignoring and thinking that it would just get better. I mean, Robin, I was sick. I was so sick that I was crawling up steps because I couldn't walk the step. And at that time, I talked with a lot of people who I had met who had ostomies. And what I discovered was that I had never met a person, or I hadn't to that point talked to a person who had regretted an ostomy. I had talked to people who said that they wish that they had done it sooner.
Yes.
But I had never talked to a person who said, I wish I had never done it. And so between hearing my doctor basically say, like, do you want to see your kids get married or do you not? And then talking to people and hearing that, wait a second, maybe this isn't the end of the world. Maybe this is the beginning of something. And that put in the perspective that I needed to make the decision. And I fought with my parents. Oh my God. My parents have always been there. They've been there through this whole disease journey. And I rely on my parents a lot when it comes to my disease, just because I don't remember so much from when I was younger, but they've been there for everything. And they did not want me to do it. They wanted me to go to UNC. They wanted me to go to, Mayo and Cleveland and all of these places for second and third and fourth opinions. Mm-hmm. And I finally came to them, I'm a mom. Yeah. I've got this for my kids. And now, so my surgery was in 2015 and this is 2022. So what is that? 6 years later? Oh my gosh, do I wish I had done it sooner? Yes. Like I'm now one of those people who says, I wish I had done it sooner.
I always know, because you mentioned the statistics, and maybe we can put that in the show notes. I always know that there is a chance that I will have to have another surgery, that there is a chance that I will end up living with an ostomy, forever. I've had temp ostomy twice. Based on the statistics, statistics alone. So when you said that, it just like hit me.
Well, and then, add that, and then we're women, right? And so
yes.
Society puts this huge focus on the female body.
Yes.
And so for me as a woman, it was, oh my gosh, are people going to see it? Am I going to be able to wear dresses? Am I going to be able to wear skirts? Are people going to see it through my clothing? Is it going to make me, it's weird to say, what is that going to do to me as a female, right? Like when I wear a bathing, when I'm sitting, and there are days that I still stand in the shower and I take my ostomy bag and I roll it up and I cover it up with my hand, you know what I mean? Because I'm, but I think all of those things made me put it off for way too long.
Yeah.
And I will say, I did not realize the life that I was not living because of my disease, because I had this disease for so long. I wasn't living. Mm-hmm. And for the, these past couple years, holy moly, like that's what it's like to not look for a bathroom every place that you go. Like, I mean, literally, I could tell you, because I grew up in Knoxville and my GI was in Nashville at Vanderbilt. And so, it's about 2.5 hours. I could tell you every Cracker Barrel and hotel from Knoxville to Nashville, because that's where we used to have to, because, as IBD patients, right, we don't want to use gas station bathrooms. So we use hotels and go to Cracker Barrel. I could tell you.
Right. Oh, wait, stop. I'm going to say this. Pro tip, everyone who is listening, when you are on the road and you're taking a long road trip, I know, surprising, people with IBD taking long road trips. It happens. But when you're on a long road trip and you don't want to stop at the gas station bathroom, stop at the hotel that is right there at the same exit as the gas station and use their public restroom on the main floor. That is a pro tip.
Yeah. You just walk in like you're a guest. You go past the front desk like you belong there. It's usually backed by the pool.
I mean, it is a public bathroom. So it is, there's no law that says you have to be staying at that hotel. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just like, pro tip.
Oh, yeah.
So we've had a couple of people already, their episodes have published that have talked about having a temp ileostomy, but then thinking they're going to make it permanent just because of what you mentioned, the freedom, getting your life back. I think that we, as people living with chronic illness and as women, like you said, we normalize so many things that are not normal.
Right.
We normalize so many things and we're like, oh, well, that's just, that's how my life is now. So must be normal. Like, I'm just going to keep on keeping on until I can't keep on anymore. And then I'll, take a nap and start do it again.
I mean, I was like in the point where I needed to wear diapers, but refusing to wear diapers because I wasn't going to wear diapers.
Yeah.
But like you said, like, oh, well, this is just part of the disease. Like, I'm just supposed to deal with this. Like, no one should deal with that.
In addition to seeking your care from your gastroenterologist, you should also potentially consider, if you have the means to do so, when something like that is happening, incontinence of either kind, urinary incontinence, or I don't know bowel incontinence. Is that what it's called? I don't know. Fecal incontinence. A pelvic floor physical therapist is, there are more and more around. Do you see a pelvic floor physical therapist?
So I have since been diagnosed with pelvic floor dysfunction, which I never knew that was a thing. And after I had my surgery, I was still having pain. And I was like, literally, I called the doctor. I was like, it didn't work. It didn't work. I'm sick again. The disease is back again. And we eventually realized that there is like this thing called pelvic floor dysfunction. And because I'm a female with IBD, and on top of that, I have birthed 2 children. Well, I mean, they didn't come out that way, but I carried 2 children.
Yeah.
Everything is just wonky, but the muscles down there are so, I guess they explained it to me that they're way too tight. And so yeah, I saw right before COVID hit, I started to go see a pelvic floor therapist, and oh my God.
Yes. This is a thing that I just found out about as well. And I am so happy that I found out about it, but also like, why is this not something that people talk about? One of my friends who has been on the show, Stacy, also went to see a pelvic floor physical therapist recently. But our conversation, what she said was everybody who has surgery has some kind of therapy, physical therapy afterwards. Like if you have orthopedic surgery, shoulder surgery, knee surgery, hip surgery, if you have any of this kind of surgery, you're going to have some kind of physical therapy or occupational therapy after surgery to help you rehabilitate everything that was worked on to get it back to as normal as it can be. But I've had multiple pelvic surgeries and 2 babies, and you've had multiple pelvic surgeries and 2 babies, and nobody's like, hey, maybe we should give that area of your body physical therapy so it can get back to normal. Yeah, I'm about to get on a soapbox. I'm going to step off of it and let you talk.
Well, no, I mean, I like even around little things like the way that, I mean, I would walk hunched over, not realizing it because I was guarding my stomach because I had this disease for so long. And even if I hadn't, I think with IBD, the pain can be so severe that we trudge through, but we guard, right? And so like, that was part of the thing that the therapist said is like, you don't realize that you're walking and holding your stomach, like you're guarding your stomach when you walk. So yeah, to your point, like, holy moly.
Light bulb moment. So we recognize that this kind of treatment and care is not available to everyone. It should be available to everyone. And we recognize that it's not. But if it is available to you and you have pelvic pain or trouble with incontinence, talk to your GI about it and ask if that is part of their care, if they have a referral, if they have a care team that provides it. If you're at an academic center in a university setting, they should have access to a pelvic floor physical therapist. So just in an effort to advocate for yourself and not normalize pain and incontinence, speak up for yourself with your doctor. Write it down if you have to and let them read it if you don't want to say it out loud.
Or your OBGYN will have those resources also.
That's a good point. Pelvic floor, this is not just for women. Pelvic floor physical therapy, not just for women. Is there something you'd like to share that we haven't touched on yet?
The fact that we both have 2 children, but that we both are divorced and got divorced when our children.
Yes, that is also a similarity.
The one thing that and it's something that my ex-husband and I used to disagree about very much, but I am always brutally honest with my kids, but on their level, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense to me. Yes.
Because kids are more aware. They're more perceptive than we give them credit for.
100% of the time, 100% of the time, that is true.
And so and now my kids are at a hard age, right? I have 12 and 9. And so the older one is like not quite a teenager, but definitely like a teenager almost. I am very honest with my kids. And even when it comes to my disease, I felt like it was important that they always knew what was going on with me. Some of it was my own fears, right? Like I used to have fears that when I was like at my worst, right, before I had my surgery, my biggest fears were like that my kids were going to find me passed out on the bathroom floor from like all this blood loss, right? Because the toilet bowl was constantly filled with. My biggest fear was that they would find me on the floor and have to call 911. Like that was literally my biggest fear before I had my surgery, was that my kids are going to find me. I'm not going to be able to function. They're going to have to call the ambulance. And I think that I had to be honest with my kids. I had to tell them, mommy has pain in her belly and her intestines are not happy. And I didn't say attacking because that sounds scary, right? But they're sick and mommy has to take medicine every day. And even when I had my ostomy, I had my 3-year-old at the time, like helping me change my ostomy bag when I came home from the hospital, because we have to normalize these things for our kids so that they're not scary, so that they understand that it's like my mom used to tell me. My mom used to tell me when I was younger and like so down on having IBD, everybody is dealing with something, right? Everybody has stuff that they're dealing with. And my mom used to say, if everybody put their troubles in a bag, right, all the things that were wrong with them, and they could choose anything, they would still choose to pick out their own because what the next person is dealing with. And so I always felt it was very important for my kids to know the truth. Mommy will be okay, but mommy has to take medicine. And some days mommy is not okay. And some days we're going to lay in bed and watch TV all day and eat crap food, because mommy just doesn't have the energy to do anything else. But I feel like it taught them empathy and it taught them a level of kindness that it makes them, they just are caring, want everybody to be okay, worry about, not even just me, but does that make sense at all?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. So my girls have the misfortune of having a mom who is very direct, almost brutally honest kind of person. So I say that my girls are more caring and empathetic. They both have gone into some sort of medical field, but they are also brutally honest. So that kind of adds an edge to their caring and empathy. But I will say that, like my older daughter, she was 2, about to be 3 when I went into the hospital the first time, was there for 21 days. That's when I got my diagnosis, and also when my colon was removed. And I usually tell the story about my younger daughter who turned 1 while I was in the hospital, and we had her first birthday and she took her first steps in the family waiting room, right at the hospital. But my older daughter knew that I wasn't there, right? Because my younger daughter was an infant. And my older daughter knew that I wasn't there and cried to come and see me in the hospital. And so I think that sometimes I don't talk about that because that is like, gets me in the heart every time. Like when she came to see me, when her dad brought her to come and see me in the hospital, I had just been taken off the morphine drip after surgery, right? So my pain was not managed at all after having abdominal surgery. And when I had surgery 20 years ago, I'm sure this is your experience too. It wasn't surgery with a robot. It wasn't like 4 little holes and they do it all. It was a 13-inch scar down the center of my abdomen that was stapled, right? So here's this 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old child coming to see their mother in the hospital with just all these tubes and wires and this giant scar down her stomach. And I want her to come in bed and I want to hug her, but I can't let her get anywhere near my abdomen, right? So, okay, I'm going to be fine.
No,
but after that surgery, I felt so much better almost immediately, even with the recovery. And I think that so many people who wait too long to have surgery have that same experience. You wait till it's the last resort and then you feel so much better. You're like, okay, I'm better. So even though I knew that I had this diagnosis and it was not curable, I felt so much better. So I had the luxury of ignoring it for a few years because I felt so much better. Nothing was as bad as it was before. So what if I was going to the bathroom so much? So what if I had an ostomy for a year? So what if all these other things, it was not nearly as bad as it was when I was sick. So I could manage it, right? That's that normalizing thing again. So my kids didn't really get to see me feeling sick again until they were a little bit older, middle school age, like your kids are now. And I think that it does make them more empathetic and more caring and more understanding of other people's feelings and emotions and wellness and health. It makes them, I don't know, I think it makes them justice seekers too, because they want to protect other people. They want to make the world better for other people who are experiencing the same things that their parents experienced.
I think that's exactly what I was looking for. And I couldn't find the words to say it, but I think you're right. I mean, I see it in my kids who tell me about the kids in their class who have the AIDS because they have autism or various disabilities. And I see how my kids want to talk to those kids and try to befriend those kids because maybe I'm just a super mom and a really good parent. I don't know. Right. But I would like to think that it's to what you're saying. I've told them about how I missed a lot of school. I told them about how I was the kid made fun of because my cheeks were so swollen from being on prednisone. And I've told them about how it was hard for me to make friends because I was in and out of school so much. And I was always the quote unquote sick kid. And to your point, I think that because they've heard me tell them those things, like they don't want anybody else to feel lonely or sad or not have a friend or anything that they've heard me say that were my experiences.
I mean, it's bittersweet, right? You're so grateful that your children have that empathy, but also the fact that what you have to go through and they have to go through with you, right, to get to that point.
Well, and I think what's hard for me is that my younger one was 3, okay, and my older one was 5 when I had my surgery. And it sounds like it's not that far apart, right? But there's a lot, right? In those, I mean, you're talking like t-ball and little soccer, all of those things that I missed from my older one, all of those play dates that I was just too sick to take my older one on that my younger one got to experience. And I think that that's what's hard for me is I see even socially, my younger one is much more extroverted than my older one. And who knows, maybe that would have happened anyway. But there's a part of me that sits back and says, is it because I was too sick to take him to the park? Is it because I was too sick to take him on those play dates? Is it because I was too sick to take him and let him do t-ball and 5-year-old soccer, where my younger one got to do those things? Because by that point I had my ostomy and we were going to the park. He was going to play dates, all of those things. So it's hard for me to take this disease and then look at my kids and are things in their life because their mom has been sick? Mm-hmm. Or would it have been this way anyway? I don't know.
You won't not know that. And as a mom who has already been through this whole route, and I have 20 somethings, I mean, it is hard and you will never know. But I look at my girls now and I'm just so proud of the people that they are and the women that they're becoming. And I also ask myself, would they be these people if I didn't have IBD? Right. Oh, yeah. I think in the first episode that Alicia and I recorded, when we just talked about like what our plans were for the podcast, I talked a lot about how I know that I wouldn't be the person that I am without IBD. Like I have no idea who I would be. I have no idea of who I would be if I hadn't gotten diagnosed when I did and hadn't had the specific journey that I had, all those things. So I look at my girls and I'm like, would you be different people? Just like you said, would you be different people if I didn't have to have your aunt and your grandmother take you to dance and to softball practice or Mardi Gras? I never took them to like any kind of amusement park or anything like that when they were little. Anything where there was a public bathroom that I may not be able to get to because of lines. Like if there was any place where the public bathroom could potentially have lines, I was not going to that place. And so they didn't get to do any of that stuff with me. So I think about exactly what you said, like how are their lives different because they had a mom with IBD?
And even now, I mean, I'm in quote unquote remission, right? But I've had this disease and this disease is not just stomach aches and constipation or diarrhea. It's not just the gut. So much of what I deal with now, even though I am in a remission, the fatigue, like the things that come with IBD that people don't think about, the brain fog, the fatigue. I fall asleep before my 12-year-old does.
Right.
like the other night, I heard him. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I heard somebody walking up the steps. I was like, "Oh my God! Like somebody's in my house. What's going on?" It was my 12-year-old. Like I had literally fallen asleep with the TV and the lights on in my room, and here's my 12-year-old like coming up the steps because he went to get something to drink. Night, mom. And I'm like, okay. So just the aches and pains, like sorry guys, like I need you to carry in all the groceries because I'm too tired after walking the grocery store because my legs hurt from my arthritis.
Logan used to say that she was my memory. So she had to remember things for me, which I hated that because I felt like that was undue pressure on her. But she was just like, she thought it was a game. I'm your memory, mom. And Bailey used to tell me things like, don't be a clown, write it down. Their grandpa used to tell them that. And so they thought it was funny to tell me, don't be a clown, mom, write it down. So just the memory, the brain fog, that kind of stuff, you're bringing back those memories. I have another question kind of going back to the similarity that we mentioned before we got down the rabbit hole of the kids. Do you think that you would be divorced if you didn't have IBD?
I think that's a question I ask myself every single day. There's a part of me that would like to think if I didn't have IBD, then I wouldn't be a single mom trying to juggle working full time, getting kids to school, getting myself, my medical needs taken care of, their needs taken care of. But then there's a part of me that says, is it unfair to blame all of that on my disease? You know what I mean? Like, would it have happened anyway? I was scrolling through social media and saw this article, and basically it was how in a couple, if the woman has the chronic illness, the couple is more likely to split, to end the relationship, than if the man has the chronic illness. And, I think, the premise is that as women, we're nurturers, we're caregivers, and a lot of men just are not built that. I mean, there are men who are built that way. I think my ex-husband was not one of them. I would like to say, I don't know, because at the end of the day, if he couldn't handle my illness, then was he really the right person? Right. Because my IBD, I don't want to say IBD controls me, but for the longest time it did. It controlled everything. It controlled me leaving the house. It controlled what I ate. It controlled when I woke up, when I went to bed, how many times I was up at night. And unfortunately, IBD is just part of my package.
Right.
And it was a package that obviously he either didn't want or couldn't deal with.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if I've shared this on any of the other episodes because, memory. My IBD diagnosis changed what I was willing to accept, changed what I was willing to, it really just brought into focus, like 1,000% clarity that life is short and our time as these people who, whatever your belief system is, our time is finite. So I had some tough choices to make. And like, what did I want to raise my children like in this house? How did I want to, it just changed everything. It changed everything about how I wanted to live my life and what I was willing to accept. And I think that led to it more so than anything else.
It's funny that you say that because I don't know if you remember a conversation that you and I had. It was around the 2018 time that you referenced earlier. And we had this conversation. And I remember you telling me that. And I felt broken for so long. I had had this disease my entire life. And my biggest fear was always, am I going to find somebody to put up with it, to deal with everything that came along, the doctor's appointments, the shots, the lab work, the not feeling well constantly, the not being able to go anywhere, do anything. I thought that I couldn't do any better. And looking back at it now, I mean, I got married when I was 24 years old. I was a baby. And I remember the conversation that you and I had where you said exactly to me what you're saying now, that it taught you what you were willing to accept and what you weren't. And it was then that I realized just because I have this disease, I'm not broken.
We're not.
I'm not unlovable. I don't have to settle. I deserve somebody. And it's funny because now I'm dating somebody now who, when I got COVID, literally, okay, I mean, we can be crass, right? Can I say shit?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Literally held my shit in his hands as he helped me change my ostomy bag. And to go from somebody who never attended a doctor's appointment and who wasn't even there when I was wheeled back into surgery, when I had my ostomy surgery, wasn't even there to watch me be wheeled back, to now I'm with a man who literally held my shit in his own hands. Like, you know?
Yeah. I think I've told this story several times and I will not stop telling this story. After my surgery in December of 2020, when everything went wrong that could possibly go wrong, one of the things that went wrong was getting in-home care after. So after you have surgery, for everyone who doesn't have an ostomy, for however long you're able with your insurance or whatever that looks like, you will have a home health nurse come to help change your ostomy and then teach you how to do it. And so I did not have that for probably, golly, at least 2 weeks. And you should never leave your ostomy bag on for 2 weeks. Like, it's just there's going to be, Kim is rolling her eyes at me and laughing. You should never leave it on for that long. And I was too weak to change. I could not change the bag on my own. I could not do it. I was too weak. I couldn't hold up a mirror. I couldn't stand up long enough to do it. I was too weak to do it. And so Matt watched a YouTube video and changed my ostomy bag for me until we could finally get it all settled for an ostomy nurse to come and help me. But I was like, this is the difference. Like, this is the difference.
Oh, I remember when I met Chris, and keep in mind, when I had my ostomy, I was married, right? So I thought I would never have to deal with telling a man about this ostomy bag and never have to deal with, like, would a man want to have sex with me because I've got this bag hanging off of me, right?
Right.
And so I remember when I met Chris and I was divorced, I had 2 kids. And on top of that, I had literal baggage. Like, I literally had a baggage hanging off of my stomach 24/7.
It's a designer bag, baby. You have a full set of Gucci luggage. This is not like you're carrying trash bags down the street. That's how I said it myself. I have baggage, but it is a full set of Louis Vuitton or whatever the most expensive luggage that you can think of is. That is what you have. Designer bags.
I tell my kids it's my superpower, right? Like when I had my ostomy surgery, I used to say like to my kids, first of all, mommy can't fart anymore. So we always know where the smell is coming from.
I did the same thing.
Number 2, it's my superpower because I am pooping all the time and you never know.
That's right. I love it. I love that so much. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Keep in mind, my little 3-year-old, and I had my ostomy surgery. We were in the grocery store and he's like potty training, right? So he's like doing the potty dance and he's like wiggling and jiggling and this, that, and the other. And I turned to him, I was like, do you have to go to the bathroom? And he's like, no. I'm like, are you sure? Like, we can go potty right now. He's like, I'm not like you, mommy. My poop just doesn't come out. Announcing to the entire grocery store, okay, that his mom is sitting here like pooping.
That's nice. That's very nice. My kids loved that I couldn't fart. Like, that was the story they told their friends. My mom can't fart. You have boys. I had girls, and they still thought that was the best, funniest story to tell their friends. Okay, back to what you were saying before.
So when I met Chris and when I had to have that conversation, I have IBD, right? Because already it was a conversation, right? You're going to date somebody who is 40 years old and has, 2 children and is that in itself. And so then I had to figure out, how am I going to broach the conversation about A, having IBD, B, having an ostomy bag? Because at this point, if somebody can't deal with it, I'm not going to like dance around. A, I'm 40. Like, if it's a problem, like, let's get that off the table right now. And I remember like, it was like this big thing. And I remember like almost making it like, I've got something really important that I've got to talk to you about, like really, really heavy conversation. And I remember when I told him about the ostomy bag, he looked at me, he's like, what do you have to tell me about? Like, what are we talking about? And I was like, do you understand? Do you understand that there's like this bag that's attached to me that's never coming off, that's not going anywhere? And his response of just like, and like, what's the problem here? Like, what's the big deal? That's when I heard Robin in my head saying, you don't settle. You're worth it. You're worth somebody who this is not a big deal to. This is just you. And even now, it's more me doubting, more me and my lack of self-confidence, I guess.
Mhm.
But like, he's like, I don't see it, where, I even still like don't want to walk around naked because here's this bag. And he's like, I don't see it. What's the problem here?
That's awesome. And you found it, right? It's possible. I found it too.
Yeah.
With Matt. I had to have the same conversation. Like, I have 2 kids and I have this incurable disease, and, it goes through stages of being active and stages of being remission, and it's going to always do that. And it's never going to go away. And I can't promise you that I'm not going to end up in the hospital or have surgery or do all these things again. And he was the same thing. He's like, do we need to stop at the next exit so you can go to the bathroom? Like,
What's funny is I think the brain felt like that stuff. He's like, really? I just told you. I'm like, I know. I can't remember. Like, this is stuff that he sees more as like a quote unquote issue, right? Than the fact that I have an ostomy bag.
Right.
Like, really, I'm beating myself for the 5th time today. You just asked me that question. I know I just asked you. I can't remember what you said.
Yeah. Oh, that still happens. As a matter of fact, I will say, I told you. And he's like, did you just think you told me? Like, did you have a whole conversation in your head and then didn't tell me? And I will never, ever admit that I just thought it and didn't say it and didn't remember not saying it. So like, I have the same problem.
Yeah.
There's a meme. It's one of his favorite jokes. There's a meme about a wife telling her husband, you never listened to me. And the husband says, well, that's a funny way to start a conversation. So like, he hasn't been listening at all. She's probably been talking for 10 minutes and then you never listen to me. Yeah. That's how we feel about when we're talking to each other and we can't remember. He does it too.
Man, that brain fog, I'll tell you. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know what day of the week it is right now. Is today Wednesday or Thursday? I don't know. I will find out tomorrow. I don't even know how long we've been talking. I don't know how long this episode is going to be. I don't know.
So I have to say that I hesitated. Even when you first asked me, of course, I was like, yes, I'll do it. Of course I'll do it. Like, I'll do anything for Robin. Robin's amazing. Like, Robin is one of those people who I want to be Robin, right? And
oh my gosh. I can't believe you just said that.
But deep down, I was like, can I do this? Because my disease is not anything that I ever embraced.
Right.
It was something, and I said it earlier, right? It's always been there. And I've tried to ignore it, even though you can't ignore IBD.
You can't. No, you
and
cannot.
So I think that this is very cathartic for me because I have to be that role model to what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yes.
I want to be that role model for my kids, and I need to stop using IBD as the reason for all of the things.
Yes.
I get divorced because of IBD. If I didn't have IBD, would I have been a doctor? If I didn't have IBD, would I have been a lawyer? Would I be living in Nashville, or would I have traveled the world? All of these things that I would like to think that if I didn't have IBD, I would be or do. I mean, heck, like, I've left the country once in my life. And even then I got sick with an IBD flare. And
oh my God.
All these things. I want to go to Italy and I want to go to Hawaii and like all of these things. And I say, well, I haven't been able to do it because I have IBD.
No.
But it's a mind shift that I have gradually been working on, like acknowledging and accepting that IBD is a small part. It did control me for so long. That's the reality. Robin, I've been on over 30 different medications for this disease. I got put on prednisone when I was 5, and I didn't come off prednisone until I was 38 years old.
You got put on prednisone when you were 5.
Correct. I did not come off of prednisone until I was in my 30s, like 37 or 38 years old.
And you did not develop steroid dependence?
Oh, I did. After I had my surgery, I was still on prednisone for I think like another year after it. And like, we're talking like 0.5 milligram every day, 0.5 milligram every other day, because I was dependent on it. My adrenaline system had to figure out how to work again. But my point is that this disease now has to take a back seat to everything else in my life because I am well. For the first time these past couple of years, I'm finally able to live a life that I didn't know that IBD took away from me.
Yes.
I think this disease has been the forefront of every day of my life for so long. And I used to wake up saying, okay, how long until my stomach hurts? And I used to go to bed saying, okay, how long until I wake up having to go to the bathroom? And even though I've been in remission since I had my surgery, there's still a part of me that hasn't accepted that. And maybe that's because everything else that I've been going through, getting divorced and learning to be, a single mom and all of that. But there's still a part of me that hasn't accepted that IBD. I mean, yes, it'll always be there, right? It's a chronic illness. It's never going away. I have this ostomy bag, but IBD doesn't have to enter my life and my mind at every minute of every day anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, you really just have to change the way you think.
Yeah.
I mean, for me right now, because everything has been completely up and down since 2018, when something else happens, I judge my reaction by my doctor. If my doctor tells me, okay, we found this, but I'm not worried about it, it is treatable, and this is what we're going to do to fix it, and it's going to be fine, then I'm like, great. But if my doctor's like, okay, so we found this and we have to go in and look and take biopsies, and then I would love to say that I have a healthy dose of concern, that I don't get overly concerned. But I think that anyone who's listened to a couple of episodes knows that I get this sense of urgency to go out and live my best life as fast as I can. Whenever I find out something that could be scary, I am not scared of having a permanent ostomy, but after my last surgery experience in December of 2020, I know that there are things that can happen with surgery. And so that part of it, like if I had to have surgery again, that would be pretty scary for me just because of my past experience. And I want to say that what happened to me can happen to anybody who has surgery. It's not specifically for somebody with IBD, and the chances of those kinds of things happening are rare. I'm just the lucky person that it happened to. And while it was scary for my family and myself, I'm glad it was me, because here I am, fine. Not just surviving, but thriving. So I feel like that sense of urgency that comes up for me can drive the people around me a little bit crazy. And while it does get me out and doing things, it's probably detrimental, right? But it's a direct result of something happening with my IBD and me reacting to whatever that is that happens with my IBD.
So funny what this disease, how it does that, how it either makes people curl into a ball and like, you know what I mean? And like, just let life pass them by, or how it does the opposite and people just say, you know what, screw IBD.
Right. I guess it takes all kinds, right? So to wrap it up, the question that we ask everyone, what is the one thing that you want IBD patients to know?
This disease doesn't define you. Live your life. Be that person who lives with IBD, but doesn't let IBD have you. Live your life in spite of having IBD.
And on that note, thank you, Kim, for being my guest on this show. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Hey, this is Kim. If you like this episode, subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends.